This is Grace for the Grieving, a gift to you this holiday season. My name is Marnie Steinwand. I'm a consultant and coach with an organization called Journey with Grief. Now, as we start this process, it's important to recognize that every person's journey with grief is absolutely unique and individual. They say that there are no two snowflakes that are alike, and I truly believe that that is the case with people who are grieving. We all have our own unique version of what it feels like to live in the impacts of loss of somebody that we're missing. Now, for those of you who are grieving, there are gifts that are offered, and they are the kind of gifts that should on you. And that sounds kind of funny. It's a play on words, and it's being thrown around a lot in the grief community this season. And I kind of think it's a funny play on words, so I've used it. And what does that mean? Now, if you're somebody who has joined us because you want to support somebody who's grieving, and you've done this, please be gentle with yourself because it happens all the time. But when we know better, we do better, right? A gift that shoulds on somebody is when a well-meaning person speaks with somebody who's grieving and says, a well-meaning, you should put up a tree because you'll regret it if you don't. You should make sure you come on out to that event because you should really be around people. That'll make you feel better. You should make sure that you do this. You should make sure that you do that. The shoulds are often brought to grievers by people who either haven't had a loss and they just don't realize, so they mean it well, but they just don't realize. Or oftentimes it's other people who have been through loss, and as they navigated their own journey with loss, they determined what was working for them and what wasn't. And as a way of paying it forward, they share that information to the people around them, feeling like what worked for them applies to the people around them. And frankly, it's just not really the case. Since everybody is so unique and our journeys are so different, and what applies to us does not necessarily apply to somebody else. And so the best thing that we can offer somebody who is grieving is the respect of saying, how do you feel? And what's your take on this? And how do you want to handle this? And when they tell us, respecting that and honoring their decision. Really, that's so much more powerful than giving them a should on you. That is just not as respectful as inviting the conversation and honoring the answer. And so this is not a should on you kind of gift. This is a, I respect you and I honor your decision. So we're going to talk about some ways to tackle the things that are heavy this holiday season, and doing so in a way that supports the griever in making the decision that's best for them. One of the most present things in the holidays is expectations, and they come from everywhere. They come from our family and our friends. They come from our workplace, our community, organizations we're a part of. Sometimes they come from the television or social media or Pinterest. We see images of decked out homes, and we can't even manage the energy to maybe open up a tub to put up anything. We might be saying, I don't even know if I want to do anything for the holidays this year. However you're responding to it is right for you. If you want to decorate, if you want to decorate halfway, if you don't want to decorate at all, there is really not an expectation on you as much as the world makes us feel like there is. In those images that we see on TV, the Hallmark movies, it seems like the tables are full of smiley, happy people, generational families. Everyone's getting along. The table is laden with food that probably took days and days and days to create. And oftentimes that can just make us feel like, ugh, I don't even know if I have the energy to make a meal this year, or my family just doesn't look like that or feel like that, particularly since we don't have somebody at the table that we wish was. So those expectations seem to be all around us. but more so, they get in us. We take those expectations, we internalize them, and we put expectations on ourselves. And we can be really hard on ourselves. We really can. We can set that bar so high, and then we're emotionally exhausted or physically exhausted or just not in that space. And then our reality doesn't match up with the expectation we put on ourselves. And we can live in this sort of controversy inside where we can't get peaceful with what we decide to do this year. So being gentle with ourselves, grieving is tough, tough work. And if we can be gentle with ourselves about what's reality this year, and what do I want to tackle, what do I not want to tackle, and what am I going to, which expectations am I going to let through, and which ones am I going to check at the door so that I can be peaceful this season and have some grace. One of those things that will be on the list of decisions will likely be tackling traditions. Traditions can be some event that you do every year. It can also be where you spend Christmas and who you spend it with. If you always spend it with a certain family member, with some neighbors, where you spend it and who's home. Do you go out and cut down a tree? Do you play certain games? Who carves the turkey? Traditions can be big and small. Where and what and whom and how. So it may not feel like, oh, I don't know if we have traditions, but part of those traditions is, what do we usually do during the holidays? Where do we usually do it? And who do we usually do it with? So you'll have a decision to make about if this year you want those traditions to look the same, or if you want them to look different, or maybe an edit of the original. And only you can decide that. And those of us supporting the grieving are there to really support that decision, even if it's not the decision that we would make. In theory, if we say, if I were in that situation, I would make it different. That's not, we aren't in that situation, and we aren't that person having that grief response. So respecting and honoring their decision is such a valuable gift of grace to the grieving. So in terms of the griever, in assessing, if I'm the griever, how am I going to handle this year? We're going to look at those traditions and really tune into how we feel about them, because the information is going to provide what we need for the answer. Now, this analogy is these puppies, and honest to goodness, if I look at these puppies and my husband looks at these puppies, we are going to see two entirely different things. My husband is going to look at these puppies and he is going to see warm and cuddly and all things good. And this would be a positive inclusion for him if these puppies could be around. Now, when I look at these puppies, I have a completely different reaction. I see chewed up shoes, stains on my carpet, and sleepless nights. Messy, exhausting, and I dread the thought of it. So as you're evaluating the choices that you have in front of you for this holiday season, tune in to how they make you feel. And if it's warm and cuddly and you would miss that tradition if it wasn't there, then your answer will likely be, I want to keep it. I would miss it if it wasn't there. It would be another loss to me. If you look at that and it's nothing but dread and you're up at night worrying about it, you have permission to make a change for this year. Now, when we make a change, especially with something like traditions that have been around for a long time, we tend to think permanency, that if I change it for this year, we're changing it forever. And we don't need to burden ourselves with that type of permanency. We can make a decision for this year and next year revisit it for next year. If this year you are dreading something, it's okay to edit it. It's okay to remove it. It's okay to say, we're going to do something different this year, because this year feels different. Whether this loss occurred 10 days ago or 10 years ago, that part isn't really the factor as much as the grief is impacting you this holiday season, regardless of when the loss occurred. It's impacting you this holiday season. And so what choices do you want to make to navigate this, to make it feel as the best it can? because this is hard. It's really hard to grieve, and the holidays can add this layer of difficulty that takes it to an entirely different level. So you get to choose. When you're tackling those traditions, is it yes? Is it no? Is it edit? Now, you may be thinking, easy for her to say because I live in a family and they all have different opinions. And you're absolutely right. Everybody grieves differently. And just like I said, if I look at these puppies, I see something different than my husband does. And if I make a decision about a tradition, it may affect other people in the family. And they might not see it the same way. They might not. And that's where it gets complicated. Grieving is really complicated. If you're a family member listening in or a friend listening in, the best thing you can offer is the conversation and the honoring and respecting where someone else is, and then deciding, okay, now this affects me and what will I do? So it could be that some members of the family will still do some of those traditions, some won't. Some will say, yep, we're all on board to take a break this year. We'll revisit it next year. But that communication, just broaching it, man, that's really hard, isn't it? It's really hard to broach these topics, and it's really hard to consider saying no to somebody. And so as you're deciding what to do for you, I would encourage you to consider, you're already going to be considering, what's this going to feel like to say no? Also consider, what will it feel like to live out the yes? What will it feel like to live out the yes? And if that's harder than the thought of saying no, then you probably have the start of your decision. Those conversations are scary and they're uncomfortable. And only you can decide if that's the next step or if keeping it's the next step. But you do have permission and every right to make a choice that's right for you this year when it comes to traditions. Now, when we talked about removing some traditions, there's also the opportunity to add some. Now, they might become a tradition. You might like them so much this year that you do them again next year, and that's how traditions are born. Or you just add something for this year, and you do it once, and that's that. It was something meaningful done in that particular year. These are just some ideas to throw out there. Different things connect with different people. So as I talk through them, you can certainly tune into what connects with you, if any of them, and what you might want to include this year. The paper chain of memories is just a really, really neat process. This is something that you can do on your own. So if the people around you are not grieving in the same way or don't have the same type of personality, this is something you can do on your own. If you think that the people in your family and friend group would be on board with taking part in this, it can become even more powerful. So what this is like when I was a kid, we would take construction paper in pieces, and we would loop them together and staple them or glue them, and then add another one, and it would create a chain. We often put them on the Christmas tree at church, you know? So what this theory is before you loop those together, sit down with your slips of paper and dig into your memories and your thoughts of the person you're missing this year. And write on those pieces of paper your memories and your thoughts, a place you went, a time you shared, a date, a quality that they have. And then you chain those memories together. Now, if this is a group activity, it can become really powerful because then you have your memories, but in the rest of the room, you have all kinds of other memories as well. So as each of you bring a piece of paper to create the chain, out loud, you explain what's on your piece of paper. And it could be, I'm remembering this trip that we took to such and such place and the car broke down. And now other people in the room may have been part of that memory. Or you may hear memories that are so reflective of the person you're missing, but one that somebody else had with them, and it's just really a neat experience to hear a little more about this person you love in a different way than you experienced. So that room full of memories, as you go around and have those conversations and tell those stories and create the chain, that can be a beautiful experience. You can put it on your tree, you can hang it on the wall, but the process is what it's really all about. Certainly lighting a candle is a great thing. The writing a card or letter can be a very therapeutic process. And the goal of this is one of two things, or perhaps both. When we lose somebody, we have love unfinished and we have life unfinished. So there's a good chance that that person we lost, we wish we would have said something to them, or we wish we would have apologized for something, or explained something, or asked something. There's something unfinished, very likely, in terms of communication with them. Also, since we've lost them, life has unfolded. And often as our life unfolds, our loved one is the first person that we'd want to call and tell about, or have a conversation about, or include in this information in some way. And we have not been able to do that. And that's part of the pain of grief. So sitting down and writing a card or writing a letter and expressing those thoughts to them as if they were going to receive it can really be a therapeutic process to unload those emotions. A memory pillow is a super cool thing. You may have seen these. There's also teddy bears, where people who sew, these clever people, can take the clothing of our loved one and use it as the pillowcase, or use it as the fabric that makes up the teddy bear. And they often have the ability to embroidery or put writing on it as well, so it can have their name, their dates, whatever you'd like them to put on there, and it can be just a really cool thing to have as a memory. Now, if you're tuned in because you want to support somebody and you think, oh, I would love to do this, but now Christmas is looming, right? I would encourage you to, if you want to get a memorial gift that's this or something else, but you don't have time to get it done, you can do something even better. You can start the process of having it made. Give them a gift that has a note in it with a photo that says, this is what I'm having created for you. And then say, let's pick a date in January or February where we get together for coffee and spend some time together, and I will deliver it then. So not only have you given them something super meaningful this Christmas time, but you've also given them something even more powerful, which is the gift of your time and presence in their journey and connection. So there's the gift, and there is that date in January or February where you're saying, I'm going to show up for you, and we're going to be together and have a conversation, and I'm going to be there for you. So don't feel like it's too late, because it just isn't. Volunteering is a great way to remove ourselves from our own experience and immerse into something different. It is absolutely exhausting to grieve, overwhelming and exhausting and heavy. When we volunteer, one of the side effects is that we're often distracted. And a little distraction can honestly be helpful when we're grieving. It gives us a little bit of a break for a little bit of time. We go and immerse ourselves in that culture of the soup kitchen or the food shelf or the homeless shelter, and we immerse into that experience and the people around us and their needs. And it can be a centering experience. It can be a growth experience. And it can just give us a break, potentially. It might also trigger things, but a possibility if it connects with you. And donating is a great way to keep our loved one present in our holidays. And there are a couple ways that you can do that. One is, if you're out shopping for people on your list and you come across something and that hits you like a ton of bricks, that this is something my loved one would have liked. And we're left with that really difficult feeling of, and I can't buy it because I can't give it to them. And that's a really tough way to feel. We could also do something different and mix it up. We could actually buy that gift. And then we could connect with an organization that can connect that to a needy person. So we can donate it. Say my loved one was really into sports and I see a sports related thing. Well, I could donate that to an organization who's doing a silent auction and raising money. I could donate it to a coach at our local high school and say, could you connect with this with a kid who's less privileged and just would be blessed by this item? That could feel good. So instead of seeing that and being left with only that yucky feeling, we can add to that a positive feeling if that connects with you. Journaling is one of those things that, if it connects with you, is a really powerful process. Oftentimes, we know we feel heavy. I mean, there's just no doubt about it. When we're grieving, we physically feel the pain. We also have thoughts that run like a hamster on a wheel over and over every day. Most of the thoughts we have each day repeat daily, the same ones that we had yesterday and the day before and the day before. What a journal can do is it forces us to take those thoughts and take those feelings and put them into sentences and paragraphs on a page. And it forces us to really tune in to what we're feeling and tune into what we're thinking so that we can express them into that journal. Doing so can do a couple of things. One is it can process it, and then in some cases we can then release it. In other cases, it means that we have a better understanding of what we're thinking and we're feeling. And as we're still processing it and it's not releasing yet, we can really better understand what's weighing on us and articulate it better. So as Christmas hits you like a ton of bricks in all kinds of ways from every direction, the journal can take the chaos of that and the heaviness of that and sort through it. It's a place to sort through that. So the whole point of this is to trust yourself. Sorry? It's to trust yourself. It is to, hold on just a second. There we go. Trust yourself. When you make a plan, do the one that feels right to you. And that means that we have to do that tough process of letting go of the expectations and the shoulds that are placed on us from the people all around us. It also means that we have to let go of the shoulds and the expectations that we put on ourselves. And I get that that's a big job. But if we can get there, what's left is how we really feel about it. Without the shoulds, without the expectations, how do we really feel about it? And if we can make a plan that feels right, then we go and do whatever that is. We either stay home from the holiday party or we go. And once we make that decision in theory, then we live it in reality and we decide how we feel about it in reality. So if I decided to go to that holiday party and I get there and, I don't want to be here. Now all of a sudden it feels differently than it felt in theory, then it's permission to go home. Or if I didn't go and I'm sitting at home and I think, I really wish I would have gone. I'm going to go ahead and throw on my clothes and I'm going to head in there. The key to the whole thing is giving ourselves grace. Because the only thing harder than taking on these decisions and then having to live through them and perhaps change how we feel about them midstream is when we beat up ourselves for how we handled it. Because you and I both know that it comes very naturally to us. If we do something and then it didn't work out the way we thought it would, we go home and beat ourselves up. Oh, I wish I hadn't gone in the first place. I wish I would have stuck it out and I hadn't left early. I wish. So now I've gone through a tough decision, a tough experience, and I go home and I'm tough on myself. And so grace is the most important factor in the whole thing. If we're the other people at that holiday party and the griever says they need to go, our gift to them is not say, you should stay. Oh, you shouldn't have come. Our gift to them is grace. To accept and honor how they feel and tuning into what they need to do in that moment. The gift we give to ourselves as grievers is grace, to say, I'm going to go from this tough situation and go home and not be tough on myself. Because that just makes this whole thing harder. And that takes a conscious decision, because as we process it, we'll think, gosh, I regret that. I wish I hadn't done that. And it's okay to process it, but if we beat ourselves up over and over and over again, that just makes things so much harder. So this season, my present to you is to offer you grace. And I hope that you will take that and you will continue to give that gift to yourself over and over and over again. Each time you make a decision, give yourself grace. Each time you tackle something, give yourself grace. Each time you adjust, give yourself grace. It is the most important gift you can give yourself as you navigate this really heavy season. I certainly invite you to stay connected. These are the places that you can find me. If you have listened to this and you have comments or you have questions, or you'd just like to stay connected with some support, you can find that on my Facebook page. It's called Journey with Grief. On that page, you will find things posted every day that deal with supporting the grieving. There's articles at times, all kinds of things that are tuned into where a griever may be that day. You can also find me on the Marnie J. Steinwand Consultant Coach page. On that one, it is more about the advocacy and educational offerings that I have available for grief. I have a web address if you're on LinkedIn, but please be sure and come and comment or question, and I would certainly be happy to continue to support you during this holiday season and certainly beyond.